Hi chums, it's 7 o'clock in the evening here on the 2nd of September. I just wanted to start here to let you see how the setting sun lights up the garden. The sun's fairly high in the sky. It'll get dark around about 9 o'clock, but I always think that is really lovely there. So we're going to revisit the tomato trial because I mentioned in the last video that I was going to take some drastic action. Well, I've done that and made quite a little discovery. So we'll just head down there now. Just show you that last again. Isn't that lovely? In winter time, when the sun's setting around about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, that is really spectacular. It just lights up beautifully. Now, drastic action. There's my Roma tomatoes. And these are Constulto or Consoluto Fiorentino. These bizarre looking boys here, but that's about as far as I'd let them go, because if they go any further than that they start to rot. So I'm taking them off. Look at that, there's bug damage on that one there. So, and this one here is called Hundreds and Thousands. Not as prolific as I was led to believe, but a very tasty tomato, very nice tomato, and everything's doing well. But the tomatoes are the main thing here at the moment, so we'll head into the greenhouse and look at those. Right, here are the tomatoes that were on the trial. That one was pruned, that one was not pruned, that one was not pruned, and these two in the middle were pruned. Now, I was listening to a gardening show on Saturday, as I said, and the guy on it recommended that in Ireland at this time of year we take all the leaves and flowers off the tomatoes so that they'll ripen, because sunshine is a big issue. But September is traditionally a very nice month. It's actually one of the most beautiful months in Ireland, September and May. So we had a beautiful day this last few days, and on Saturday, Sunday and Monday I started taking these tomatoes apart. As you can see, they've all got the treatment. But I said in the last video that I didn't count the tomatoes on the ones that were pruned and not pruned, but by sight it looked as if there were a lot more tomatoes on the ones that were pruned. Alright? And then I decided to count them. On this plant here, when I counted them, there were 61 tomatoes. On this plant here, there were 142 tomatoes. On this plant here, which is pruned, there were 82 tomatoes. And on this plant here, there were 123 tomatoes. So, my initial conclusion was wrong. There are more tomatoes on the unpruned tomatoes than there are on the pruned. The pruned looked as if there were more because there were such long, orderly trusses, but these tomatoes have short trusses, but there's loads and loads of them. Now, incidentally, most of those tomatoes were green on Sunday, and as you can see, they are starting to ripen. So I'm very pleased with that advice. Now, one of the things that I kept saying during this series was that I qualified my results by saying that these results were based on 4 tomato plants called Gardener's Delight in a greenhouse in Ireland, and results in other places may vary. Now, the reason I did that was because throughout the trial I was mildly disappointed that the pruned tomatoes were doing better than the ones I didn't prune, because I have been using and following Ray Praxis, his techniques for the last couple of years, and everything he has told me and everything I've copied has worked exactly as he said it would. And I was somewhat disappointed that the tomatoes, that I thought the tomatoes that weren't pruned weren't doing as well, because Ray has said that he doesn't prune tomatoes because he thinks they do better. So when the result came out last week, when I declared then that there were more tomatoes on the ones that were pruned than not pruned, I was kind of a little sense of disappointment, because I wanted it to be the other way around. And now I've got it. So Ray's theory remains intact in this greenhouse with these 4 tomatoes in Ireland. Now, just in case it's a fluke, will you see this? I had some Gardener's Delight plants left over, so I decided to put some outside. And I did the same thing. I pruned one of them and I didn't prune two others. Now, this is the tomato that I pruned. And you can see it's a meagre bunch of tomatoes. Now, tomatoes do not do well outside in Ireland, well, in Northern Ireland anyway. But wait till you see this. There's the ones that weren't pruned. Look, far, far more tomatoes. And there's the other one that wasn't pruned. Oh, look at down, look. Lots more tomatoes. So, I think that maybe confirms that pruning tomatoes does not produce more tomatoes. It produces long, orderly trusses. Now, what do I do in future? Excuse me. What do I do in future? I'm going to prune in future simply because the tomatoes are much easier to manage. When I was trying to keep the ones in the greenhouse under control, it was a daily sort of chore to tie up the branches and try to keep them from working their way through the other tomatoes and blocking the light out. So I think in terms of organisation, I'm going to prune because they're easier maintained. These are my Roma tomatoes. Now, see if I can get a bit closer here. As you can see, they're not a bad size, but getting them ripened is a problem. Now, I've been making tomato chutney and it's absolutely beautiful with those because I'm scared of losing them. But I've noticed that in the last 2 or 3 days, and I've been trying to work my way through here without knocking things off. I've noticed, look at this here, that was green. That tomato was green on Monday, so it looks as if they might be starting to ripen. I hope so, I hope so. Just while I've got the camera running, I'll just do a wee race over here and let you see the pumpkins. I cut some of the leaves back in the pumpkins to get light at them, and you can see that they're size 12 feet, so I don't know if that's any use for you, but they've done pretty well, you know. And a courgette, that's about a foot long. So the courgettes are still coming. I took the big fat courgettes off and cooked them, and they worked out beautiful. There are no problems with them at all. I just took the seeds out because they'd gone quite spongy in the middle. So I took the seeds out, and they worked the very best. Just one other thing to show you here. The potatoes I put in a couple of weeks ago, the blues that I hope to have for Christmas, well, they're doing their bit. Look at that. Those are about, what, 9 inches high now? So, happy days. So I'm going to do another couple of bags and have them for the youngsters, my son and daughter coming home at Christmas, to give them some fresh potatoes. That'll be nice. So, there you are, folks. The pruned tomatoes didn't do as well in terms of volume as the ones I didn't prune. And it worked inside and outside the greenhouse. So I'm kind of relieved by that, because I've great respect for Ray and his theories, so I'm glad to see this one remains intact. So there you go. Final shot of the garden with the light on it. Isn't that lovely? Can you hear the birds? Maybe you can hear that, I don't know. So there you go, folks. That's my final conclusion for the tomatoes. So all the best now. Bye-bye.